Commander Jalen Voss had seen many strange things across the stars, but nothing compared to the first time he saw her. She stood on the silver plains of Velos 3, tall enough to make even the colony domes look small. Her skin shimmered like moonlight. Her eyes glowed with calm intelligence, and her long, graceful arms moved with the gentleness of someone who could crush metal yet chose not to. Her name was Tirana Vel, a scientist from the distant world of Kelthar, a world where the air was thin, the gravity was light, and the beings grew as tall as starships' corridors. Jalen was human, strong for his kind, but to her he looked fragile, like something that could break if handled too roughly. He wore the dark gray uniform of the Terran fleet, his boots still dusty from patrol, and a blaster hung at his side. But in that moment, watching her kneel down to study a patch of glowing blue moss, he felt something he couldn't explain. It wasn't fear. It was awe. He had met aliens before, but Tirana was different. She didn't move like the others. There was grace in her stillness, purpose in her silence. When she spoke, her voice came out like soft wind through crystal, musical and calm. "You are Commander Voss," she said, her accent light and clear. "You guard this place." Jalen nodded, almost forgetting to answer. "And you must be Dr. Vel, the one who makes even the plants afraid to stop growing." It made her laugh, a deep, echoing sound that vibrated through the thin air. The sound wrapped around him like warmth on a cold night. That was how it began. Every evening after that, when the long twin suns of Velos 3 sank behind the silver dunes, Jalen found himself walking toward the observation dome where she liked to sit. She would be there, always in the same spot, her long legs folded, her silver eyes watching the horizon. The stars reflected on her skin like scattered diamonds. At first, they spoke about work, soil samples, weather readings, security patrols. But soon the conversations wandered. They spoke about music, dreams, fears, and the strange quiet of deep space. Tirana told him about her home, vast crystal forests, and oceans so calm they reflected the sky like glass. She said her people lived long lives, hundreds of years, yet felt emotions more slowly than humans did. Love, she explained, came to them like the slow rising of a sun. Jalen listened. And as he listened, something in him shifted. He started noticing little things, how she tilted her head when curious, how her laughter softened even the cold hum of the dome, how her enormous fingers held fragile tools with impossible care. Sometimes she would look down at him and smile, and for a moment he forgot they came from two completely different worlds. Other humans in the colony began to whisper. Some thought it was cute, the brave commander and the gentle giantess. Others found it strange, even wrong. "It's not natural," someone muttered once within Jalen's hearing. "They can't even touch properly without him breaking." Jalen ignored them. He had seen too much war, too much emptiness in space to care about gossip. What he cared about was how alive he felt when he was near her. And one evening, as they stood by the dome's glass wall looking at the distant glow of a storm, he said quietly, "You know, when I was a kid, I used to think the universe was cold, empty. But now I'm not so sure." She looked down at him, her silver eyes soft. "And now?" "Now," he said, smiling faintly, "I think the universe feels warm." For a long time, she said nothing. Then gently, she lowered her hand until her enormous fingertip brushed his. The touch was careful, almost trembling, as if she feared hurting him. But to Jalen, it felt perfect. Days turned into weeks. The human mission prepared to leave, their work nearly done. Jalen knew that once the last ship departed, he would have to choose, return to Earth or stay behind on Velos 3. He thought about duty, about his career, his home. But when he saw Tirana watching the sunset, her tall silhouette glowing against the violet sky, he already knew his answer. He couldn't leave. In her presence, he had found something rare. Peace. A kind of connection that no war, no command, no human ambition had ever given him. Love had come to him quietly, like the soft hum of the colony's lights at night. Unnoticed at first, but soon impossible to ignore. And though they came from different stars, Jalen Voss knew one truth. He would rather live a small life beside her than a long one without her. After the human mission left Velos 3, silence fell over the silver plains. The ships vanished into the dark, leaving behind only dust trails and echoes. Commander Jalen Voss stood by the landing platform for a long time, watching the sky where his people had gone. He had made his choice. He stayed. The world of Velos 3 became his home. Cold winds, violet sands, and endless twin sunsets. But for him it was not empty. It was alive because she was there, Tirana Vel, the woman who had changed everything. Together they built a small home near the Kelthari research outpost. The building was simple, half human metal, half alien crystal fused into one. It looked strange to others, but to them it was perfect. Inside, their lives blended just like that. Two hearts, two species, learning how to share the same rhythm. Their days began with soft light creeping through the clear dome. Jalen would wake first, stretch his human limbs, and glance at Tirana still sleeping. She filled half the room, tall, elegant, peaceful. Sometimes he would just watch her breathe, amazed that someone so strong could look so gentle. When she woke, she often teased him. "You stare at me like I am a sunrise," she would say. "You are," he'd answer with a grin. They cooked together, though cooking meant different things for each. Tirana ate glowing fruits from her planet. Jalen made coffee, something she found far too bitter. She would watch him sip it, amused, and ask, "Why do humans drink pain?" He would laugh. "Because it reminds us we're alive." Their love grew quietly like roots under the soil, and strong, unseen, and patient. They laughed, they worked. They watched the storms pass outside their dome. For a time it felt like nothing could break their world. But one evening changed everything. It was during the long twilight season, when the suns of Velos 3 dipped low and the air glowed purple. They sat together near the window, watching lightning dance far away. Jalen rested against her side, his hand small in hers. Tirana's voice was calm, but her eyes were troubled. "Jalen," she said softly, "there is something I must tell you." He turned to her, sensing the weight in her tone. "What is it?" She hesitated, and that hesitation scared him more than words could. "Our species," she began, "are not made for each other. I have studied it for months. Our life forms, they do not match. Our bodies cannot create life together." Her words hit him like a silent blow. For a moment the storm outside seemed to vanish, and all he could hear was the faint sound of his own heartbeat. He tried to smile. "You mean we can't have children?" She nodded slowly. Her voice trembled. "It is worse than that. If we tried, even by science, my body would destroy what we create. It would see it as disease, not as life. And if we used human ways, it would destroy me instead." Tirana looked away, ashamed of her own nature. "You deserve a family, Jalen, a child of your blood. You should not be bound to me, to something that cannot give you that." Jalen stood up, speechless. He looked at her, this towering being who could have crushed him with one hand, yet was trembling like glass. He walked closer and placed his hand on her arm. "Tirana," he said quietly, "I didn't stay here for children. I stayed for you." Her eyes shone wet and bright. "But one day you will want more." He shook his head. "I already have more than I ever dreamed." That night they didn't speak much. They just sat together in silence, listening to the soft hum of the wind outside. Jalen leaned against her arm, and she wrapped it around him carefully, as if afraid he might break. He closed his eyes, feeling her heartbeat through her skin, slow, steady, deep like thunder far away. And though the truth had hurt, he knew something powerful. Love was not measured by what it could produce, but by what it could endure. Still, when Tirana finally fell asleep, Jalen stared at the ceiling for hours. He thought of things he would never have. A small hand holding his, laughter echoing in the halls, a family built from both their souls. He imagined what their child might have looked like, half light, half flesh, eyes that shimmered with stars. And in that quiet moment, as the night wrapped around him, a single tear slipped down his cheek. Not because of what they couldn't have, but because he loved her too much to ever blame her for it. The days after that night were quieter than before. The laughter that once filled their small home had faded into silence. Jalen still smiled, still worked, still held Tirana's hand, but something behind his eyes had changed. Every morning, he would wake before her, step outside, and stand under the pale twin suns. The light painted his face gold, but his thoughts were heavy. He would watch the horizon stretch endless and empty, and in that emptiness he saw what could never be, the life they could never create. He told himself he was fine. He had chosen love and he didn't regret it. But love, he was learning, did not silence the ache of a dream denied. Sometimes, when Tirana was in the lab, he would sit alone in the nursery room, a small space he had built years ago before he knew the truth. It was simple, filled with soft light and old human toys he had brought from Earth. He ran his fingers over a tiny wooden starship, its paint chipped from time. He imagined a child holding it, laughing, running between the legs of their giant mother and climbing onto his shoulder to watch the sun set. But the room stayed quiet, always quiet. Tirana saw the change in him. She noticed how his smile came slower, how his gaze lingered on the children in the colony videos they received from Earth. She knew he tried to hide his sorrow, and it broke her even more. One evening, she found him outside sitting on the cold sand, his eyes lost in the stars. She knelt down, her shadow falling over him like a mountain. "You miss your world," she said softly. He looked up at her and forced a small smile. "Sometimes, but I don't miss the noise, the crowds, or the war. He paused, searching for words. "I just miss what could have been." She sat beside him, careful not to crush the small rocks under her weight. "If you wish to return, I will not stop you." He turned sharply toward her. "Return and leave you here?" Her silver eyes shimmered with sadness. "I do not want you to be trapped, Jalen. You deserve more than what I can give." He stood frustrated. "Tirana, don't you understand? You are what I want. I chose this. I chose you," she lowered her head, her voice trembling. "And I fear one day you will hate me for it." He stepped closer, touching her hand, so small compared to hers. "Then you don't know me at all," but even as he said it, a quiet voice whispered inside him, a voice that came in the lonely hours of the night, when Tirana was asleep and he stared at the ceiling. It whispered of the things he could never share with her, the warmth of a small heartbeat in his arms, the sound of a baby's laugh, the joy of watching something grow that carried both of them within it. He hated that voice. He tried to drown it with love, with work, with dreams of tomorrow, but it always returned. One day a message came from Earth. The fleet wanted him back. They offered him a new post, a command near his home planet, a chance to rebuild his life. Tirana handed him the datapad quietly. "You should go," she said. Jalen looked at the message, then at her. "You really think I could walk away from you?" She smiled sadly. "You are human. You were born to build, to grow, to continue your line. I cannot give you that. Maybe someone else can." Her words cut deep, but he understood the pain behind them. She wasn't pushing him away because she didn't love him. She was doing it because she loved him too much. He dropped the datapad and took her hand. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "I have spent years fighting wars, losing people, watching life fade. But when I met you, I finally understood what it means to live. I don't need blood to build a family. I need you." Tirana stared at him, her silver eyes full of tears that glimmered like liquid stars. "And what if I could find a way?" she whispered. He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Her gaze hardened with sudden fire. "If I could make life from both of us, not from my body but from our minds, our DNA, our light, would you want that?" He felt his heart quicken. "Are you saying it's possible?" "Maybe," she said, standing tall, her eyes burning with purpose. "I will find a way, even if it takes years." For the first time in months, Jalen felt hope, faint, fragile, but real. He reached up and placed his hand against her cheek. "Then we'll do it together." That night, the stars seemed to shine brighter. For the first time since the heartbreak, Jalen slept with peace in his heart. The dream of a child had not died. It had simply changed shape, from something of flesh to something of light, and in that hope, small and glowing, their love found new strength to carry on. From that night onward, something changed inside Tirana. The sadness that had once shadowed her eyes was replaced with fire, the fire of purpose. She had made a promise to Jalen and to herself. If the universe had denied them life, then she would defy the universe itself. The days became long, and the nights longer. Tirana spent endless hours in her laboratory, surrounded by glowing instruments and quiet humming machines. She barely slept, barely ate. Her silver fingers moved delicately across control panels, mixing human and Kelthari data strands, searching for a bridge between two impossible worlds. Jalen often stood by the door, watching her. The light from the lab reflected off her skin, painting her like a statue carved from starlight. He wanted to tell her to rest, but every time he saw the determination in her eyes, the words died on his lips. She was fighting for their dream, for something that might never be, yet she believed in it as if it already existed. At night, when the machines dimmed, Tirana would finally step away from her work. She would find Jalen sitting near the window, staring out at the violet horizon. He always left a cup of warm tea for her, though it was far too small for her giant hands. She would smile and lift it carefully, sipping it with childlike care. "You still believe in me?" she asked one evening, her voice tired but gentle. Jalen looked up at her and smiled softly. "I believe in us." Her heart ached at those words. For centuries, her people had believed that emotions made them weak, that logic was purity and love was chaos. But now, as she looked at this small human who had given up everything for her, she realized that love was not chaos at all. It was creation. It was power. Months passed. Their lab, hidden deep beneath their home, became their world. They called it the cradle. Inside it, light shimmered through crystal tubes that carried both human and Kelthari DNA. Slowly, impossibly, something began to take shape. At first it was just light, faint, flickering like a heartbeat seen through fog. Then it pulsed stronger, more regular. The scanners whispered of structure, of potential. Tirana's eyes glowed with wonder. "It's responding," she said in awe. "Your cells and mine. They're talking." Jalen moved closer, his heart racing. "Then it's alive?" She hesitated, then smiled. "Not yet, but it wants to be." Every small success brought them closer, and every failure broke them a little more. There were nights when Tirana collapsed from exhaustion, her massive frame trembling from too many hours without rest. Jalen would run to her side, holding her hand, whispering, "We'll get there. Don't give up." And she never did. Sometimes he would find her crying softly, tears like liquid light rolling down her cheeks. When he asked why, she would only say, "Because I have seen what could be, and it is beautiful." Jalen would wipe away her tears with his tiny hand, his voice steady. "Then let's make it real. But love and hope are dangerous things in a world ruled by rules." The Kelthari Council had strict laws, no genetic merging with alien species. They called it a crime against life, a violation of universal balance. So Tirana and Jalen worked in silence. Their lab was shielded from scanners, buried deep beneath the sand. Only the humming of machines and the rhythm of their hearts filled the air. They began to see changes inside the cradle, shapes forming, light curling into patterns that resembled a heartbeat. Jalen often stood beside it, whispering softly as if speaking to a child. "Hey there, little one," he'd murmur. "You don't know it yet, but you're loved already." Tirana would watch him with tears in her silver eyes. In that small moment, she saw everything she had ever wanted: hope, family, belonging. One night, as storms roared above the surface, Tirana finally said the words she had been afraid to speak. "Jalen," she whispered, "if the council discovers this, they will not forgive me. They will take the cradle away. They will destroy it. And maybe us too." He looked up at her with calm, steady eyes. "Then they'll have to go through me first." Her heart trembled. He was so small, so fragile, yet somehow he was braver than any giant she had ever known. "You would risk everything?" she asked softly. "I already have," he replied. "And I'd do it again, because some things are worth breaking the rules for." From that night onward, they stopped hiding their hope from each other. They worked side by side, heart to heart, two beings defying the cold logic of their worlds. And deep within the cradle, the light began to pulse faster, a heartbeat forming between the stars. For the first time, Jalen and Tirana dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, love could truly create life. For many months, hope glowed beneath their home like a secret sun. The cradle hummed softly, filled with threads of light that moved like living breath. Every day, Jalen and Tirana worked beside it, hands and hearts united, building what the stars themselves had forbidden. The being inside the cradle was small, no bigger than Jalen's palm, but it pulsed with life. It wasn't human. It wasn't Kelthari. It was something new, a bridge between two worlds. When Jalen looked at it, he saw a future he never thought possible. When Tirana looked at it, she saw the proof that love was stronger than blood or biology. They called it Oriel, a name that meant light between worlds. Their days were filled with wonder. Jalen would talk to the cradle as if it could hear him. You're going to see so much, he'd whisper. Stars, oceans, laughter. You'll know both our worlds and maybe make them kinder. Tarana would listen, her heart trembling. You sound like a father already, she'd say with a smile. But their joy was not meant to last. One quiet afternoon, as they were studying the cradle's pulse patterns, a sudden alarm filled the lab. The walls flickered red. A voice echoed through the speakers, deep, cold, official. Unauthorized energy signature detected beneath Research Zone 3. Kelthari Council Patrol inbound. Tarana froze. Her hands trembled. No. They found us. Jalen grabbed her arm. We can hide it, right? We can shut it down, she shook her head. No use, they'll scan the entire area. If we destroy the evidence, the cradle dies. If we keep it alive, they'll call it treason. He looked at her, his heart pounding. Then we fight. Her eyes softened in pain. You don't understand, Jalen. They are not soldiers, they are executioners. But he only clenched his fists. I don't care. They won't take our child. Within hours, the sky above Velos 3 filled with silver ships. Their engines roared like storms. Kelthari soldiers descended, tall and gleaming in their crystal armor. The ground trembled under their steps. Tarana stood in front of the lab door, shielding it with her body. Her voice boomed across the sands. You will not harm what we created. The commander of the patrol stepped forward, his face cold and emotionless. You have broken the Council's highest law, Dr. Vell. Cross-species creation is forbidden. You have made an abomination. Jalen stepped out from behind her, small but unafraid. Don't call it that. It's not an abomination. It's a child. The commander's eyes narrowed. You are human. You will leave this world at once. The Council will deal with her. Jalen drew his blaster. You'll deal with me first. The air went still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. What followed was chaos. Energy beams cut through the air. The sand turned to glass beneath the heat. Jalen fought with the fury of 1,000 storms. One small man against giants, refusing to fall. Tarana, her voice breaking with fear, tried to shield him as blasts struck around them. One beam hit the lab's surface, shattering part of the wall. The cradle shook violently. Inside, the small light flickered, its heartbeat stumbling. Tarana screamed. No, stop. She ran to the cradle, her enormous hands cradling it desperately. The soldiers shouted warnings, but she didn't care. Jalen ran to her side, reaching for the sphere, but before he could touch it, another explosion hit. The cradle burst open. Light poured out, blinding, pure and silent. For one brief moment, everything froze. Jalen felt warmth flood his chest like sunlight on his skin. He thought he saw a shape, small, glowing, almost smiling, before it vanished into the air like dust carried by wind. Then the light was gone. Silence fell over the battlefield. The soldiers lowered their weapons. The lab was half destroyed, the machine sparking and dead. The cradle lay shattered in Tarana's hands. She knelt in the ruins, her enormous frame trembling. Silver tears fell down her cheeks, landing like rain on the broken glass. Jalen dropped to his knees beside her, his heart hollow. It's gone, she whispered. Our child, our light. He wrapped his arms around her as much as he could, whispering, They can take everything from us, but not what we made together. They can't destroy what it meant. The soldiers turned away, silent now, unable to look at what they had done. Only their commander remained for a moment, his cold mask cracking just slightly as he whispered, I am sorry. Then they were gone. The twin suns set slowly that evening, painting the sky in violet and red. Jalen and Tarana stayed by the ruins of their dream, their hands still clasped. They had defied the universe and lost. But even in loss, their love burned bright. For in that moment of light, even if only for a second, life had answered them back, and that, Jalen thought, was enough to prove that their love had been real, stronger than fear, stronger than the laws of worlds, and strong enough to make the stars weep. The world of Velos 3 was silent for many days after the light faded. The wind still blew across the silver sands, but to Jalen and Tarana, the planet felt empty, hollow, like a heart that had stopped beating. They had lost everything. The lab was gone. The cradle was shattered. The soft glow that once gave them hope had vanished into the sky, leaving only ashes and silence. Tarana did not move for a long time. She sat beside the ruins of their home, her enormous frame still, her eyes staring into nothing. Jalen tried to speak to her, but words felt small, too small for such pain, so he stayed with her in silence. He brought her water, food, warmth, though she touched none of it. He held her hand, a hand that could have crushed a ship, now trembling like a leaf. When the Kelthari Council finally sent a message, it came cold and brief. Dr. Vell is forbidden from further research. Human Jalen Voss is to leave Velos 3 immediately. Their union is declared unnatural. Jalen read the message and deleted it without a word. He had no more loyalty to the worlds that judged love as crime. He looked at Tirana and said softly, "We'll stay. This is our home. Let them forget us," but she didn't answer. Her eyes were full of stars and sorrow. Days turned into weeks. The silence between them grew heavy but not cold. It was the silence of two souls who shared the same wound. One morning, Tirana finally spoke, her voice hoarse and soft. "I see the light in my dreams," she whispered. "It calls to me. I think it's still somewhere out there." Jalen took her hand and pressed it to his chest. "Then it's in here too." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then we will keep it alive, not in machines, but in what we do." And that was how their new purpose began. They rebuilt their home, not as a lab this time, but as a refuge. The war between species had left many stranded. Human colonists who had lost their families. Kelthari outcasts who no longer fit their world. Jalen and Tirana opened their doors to them all. At first only a few came, scared, broken, lost. A small human child whose parents had died in a mining collapse. A Kelthari worker cast out for showing too much emotion. 2 young traders from another world, too different to belong anywhere else. Tirana welcomed them with open arms, her deep voice gentle and kind. Jalen taught them how to read, how to fix machines, how to plant seeds in the dusty soil. Slowly, laughter returned to their home. The halls that once echoed with the hum of machines now rang with children's voices. The silence was replaced by life again, a new kind of life. One evening, as the suns dipped below the horizon, Tirana watched Jalen playing with the children outside. He was teaching them to fly small drones, his laughter echoing across the plains. Her eyes softened. "He is a father after all," she whispered to herself. When he noticed her watching, he waved for her to join. She smiled, that same smile that had once made him forget to breathe, and sat beside them, letting the smallest ones climb onto her arms like branches of a living tree. "Are these your children?" one of the little girls asked. Jalen looked up at Tirana. Their eyes met, the warmth full of unspoken truth. "Yes," he said softly. "All of them." Over time, word spread, more came. Humans, Kelthari, and others who no longer belonged anywhere else. Some were orphans, some exiles, some just tired of war and judgment. Together, they built a community, and not of one race or another, but of hearts that had been broken and healed again. Jalen named it Haven of Light. And though he never said it aloud, Tirana knew it was named for the child they had lost, for the dream that had begun all this. Years passed. Jalen's hair turned gray and his steps grew slower. But his smile never faded. Tirana carried him when he was too tired to walk. Together they watched the children of many worlds grow up. Tall, brave, and kind, each one carried a piece of their light. One night Jalen looked out at the colony, glowing softly under the twin moons, and whispered, "We couldn't make life our way, but maybe love found its own way." Tirana nodded, her silver eyes glistening. "Yes, life always finds a way, especially when born from love." She wrapped her arms around him, gentle and careful, holding him close as the stars shone above, and in that moment, under the quiet sky of Velos 3, they both felt it again, the same warmth they had once seen inside the cradle. A light between worlds. Alive still. Many years passed on the quiet world of Velos 3. The storms became softer, the air warmer, and the haven of light grew larger with every season. What once was just a lonely home for 2 now stood as a shining settlement, a home for many hearts, human and Kelthari alike. Jalen Voss had grown old. His once strong shoulders had bent, his hair had turned silver, and his steps had become slow and careful. But when he smiled, his eyes still shone with the same warmth that had captured Tirana's heart so long ago. Tirana, still tall and graceful, carried time differently. Her people aged slowly, but she had learned that love could make even eternity feel short. She stayed always beside him, gentle, patient, watching over him as if he were the most fragile and precious thing in the universe. Every evening, they sat together on the balcony overlooking the colony. The children, human, Kilthari, and hybrids of many kinds, would run below, their laughter echoing through the night air. Lanterns glowed softly and the sound of songs carried over the wind. Jalen would often smile and say, "Do you hear that, Tirana?" "That's the sound of our child." She would look at him with puzzled affection. "Our child?" He would nod. "All of them. Every voice, every laugh. They carry a piece of what we made." And she would smile. A small, trembling smile that held both pride and sorrow. But time, even for love, cannot be stopped. One morning, Tirana woke to find Jalen sitting by the window watching the sunrise. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale under the soft light. He turned to her and smiled weakly. "The suns are beautiful today," he whispered. "Just like the first day I saw you." She knelt beside him, her enormous hands trembling. "You should rest," she said softly, though her voice cracked with fear. He shook his head slowly. "No, not yet. I want to see the light one more time." He looked out at the twin suns as they rose, painting the silver sands in gold. His eyes filled with tears, not of pain, but of peace. "We didn't make a child of flesh," he said quietly. "But we made something better, a world of kindness, a home that will last." Tirana's voice broke as she whispered, "You gave it life, Jalen." He smiled faintly. "No, you did." He reached up, placing his small hand against her cheek. His fingers were weak, but his touch was still warm. "Promise me something," he whispered. "Promise you'll keep the light alive." Tirana's eyes filled with silver tears. "I promise," she said. He smiled, closed his eyes, and took one last breath, soft as a sigh, and then he was still. The suns climbed higher, but the world felt dimmer. Tirana stayed beside him for hours, her head bowed, her heart silent. She had known this day would come, but knowing did not make it easier. When evening fell, she carried him outside beneath the open sky. The entire colony gathered, silent and mourning. The children held lights in their hands, tiny lanterns glowing gold, drifting upward like stars returning to the heavens. They buried him beneath the violet trees, the same place where their dream had first been born. On the grave, Tirana carved simple words in both languages. He chose love over everything, and taught the stars to feel. That night, unable to sleep, Tirana walked to the old lab. It had been sealed for years, turned into a small memorial. Dust floated in the soft moonlight. She touched the cracked glass of the broken cradle, the place where their impossible dream had once lived. But then, something strange caught her eye. A faint shimmer. She frowned and leaned closer. Deep inside the old machine, a light flickered, small, gentle, but unmistakably alive. It pulsed once, twice. Like a heartbeat, her breath caught. "No, it can't be." She reached out, her hand trembling, and felt warmth against her skin. Not the cold light of a machine, but something living, something remembering. A soft sound filled the air, almost like a voice. Not words, but a feeling, familiar, kind, full of love. Tirana fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She pressed her forehead against the glowing glass and whispered, "Jalen, you kept your promise. The light lives on." The glow grew brighter, spreading softly through the lab, wrapping around her like the arms of the man she loved. It was as if the universe itself had returned his warmth to her. Outside, the stars burned brighter than ever. The haven of light shimmered against the night sky, filled with laughter, life, and love. And deep within that quiet world, a tiny light pulsed on, proof that even across death, across distance, across the cold of space itself, love never truly ends, it only changes form. It only shines brighter. The end.